Anyway, the formalities here. This is the second of the HWA Presents series, which is presented by the Horror Writers Association, and is intended to be a public program, particularly for people who are interested in the creative arts, especially in writing, and more especially in terms of observations about writing in the 21st century, that is to say, the digital age. Last month, Steve Raznick-Tem kicked off the program very, very well, I think, by talking about short fiction, both online and in paper, and about the challenges of selling short story collections. And so we're moving on from that tonight with Gary Jonas. And in part, Gary's here not only to talk about his own writing in general, and I mean, he's a very keen observer of writing online, digital, writing on paper, but he's also a one-time bookseller online. And well, we may get to the rest of his vita as we go on tonight. He's done a lot of different things. I can't get the, you said something earlier that made me think of the perfect opening question for you, and I don't want to start with that quite yet. But Gary also, here are some of Gary's books, the most recent of which is Pirates of the Outrigger Rift, written with his writing partner, Bill Allen, who's an Oklahoman. This was a book which was serialized first on Kindle, then was published by 47 North, which is the science fiction publishing adjunct of Amazon.com. And that leads to a whole bunch of complications, which we're going to talk about later. But I think this is done well for Gary and Bill. And then some of the other books here. Night Marshal, Tale of the Undead West. In that area, the Weird Western, which was pioneered by such as Joe Lansdale. Modern Sorcery, a Jonathan Shade novel. And Jonathan Shade, would you... Is he actually an occult detective?
Sure.
Could you call him that?
Yes, you could.
Yes, you could.
Investigator,
Okay.
You bet.
Paranormal investigator, very good. And then Quick Shots, which is a very handsome edition of a collection of mystery, crime, suspense, short fiction. Okay, the question that, well, no, let me backtrack one bit here. The first part of the program tonight is going to be a dialogue with Gary. At any time, any of you in the audience can ask questions, ask for elaborations, clarification, or to say flatly, that's wrong, Gary. Here's the truth of the matter. There will be
Don't say that's wrong yet.
Pardon me?
Don't say that's wrong yet. That's not allowed. Just that's wrong, Gary.
Well, but really,
That is always right.
I'm pretty much invisible in this whole process. Gary is the centerpiece.
The
of
spotlight
program.
is on my faults tonight. So.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't know whether we have enough memory on the card here for all of that, but
Probably not.
we'll see. We'll see. There will be an opportunity for Gary to read, if he wishes, and to answer questions about that which he is reading. And then there will be general question and answer time. And then after the program, those who wish to come along, there will be a supper with Gary, which you have to pay for in a proportionate share. It's not going to be free, but it'll be a good place to meet in a much more intimate setting than this room, although this is not a huge group, so I'm not sure how much more intimate the setting could get and still be proper. I had believed that the dinner was going to be at the Imperial, but then I saw an announcement saying it's going to be at the Thai restaurant up the street. So, which is it?
Larry made the reservations, ask him.
Okay, where'd you make the reservations, Larry?
The Imperial. Because only the Imperial would be great enough for Gary Jonas.
Okay.
Okay, so, okay, I am misinformed about the Thai basil.
That's what I read too.
Yeah, okay. Well, anyway, you're welcome to come down to the Imperial, which is a couple of blocks south of here, and is not blocked off tonight by construction on Broadway. Right. Also, in terms of general information, I want to thank Ron and Nina Else, who are the proprietors of the Broadway Book Mall. This is kind of a commercially communal book selling operation where there are how many booksellers here?
9.
Nine booksellers who have many different types of material that they sell, ranging from large print to sheet music. It's a wonderfully diverse store, and on behalf of HWA, I'd like to thank Ron and Nina for helping out with the venue and moral support.
It's a good fit.
So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay. The question that you brought up earlier, Gary, when you flippantly mentioned karaoke,
Yes, I mentioned karaoke.
you didn't, and maybe you weren't being flippant, but I suspect you were. But if there were going to be a karaoke performance tonight, this is actually my James Lipton impression from Actors Studio. If you were going to sing karaoke tonight, what would be your preferred song?
The first song that I did karaoke, because I actually have done karaoke, was You Give Love a Bad Name by Bon Jovi. I've also done Jim Croce and Three Doors Down and just a whole bunch of stuff. I have done karaoke.
Okay.
I'll be doing more in June at SoonerCon. We're going to be doing a promo for Pirates of the Outrigger Rift that's going to include karaoke.
Excellent. Okay, well, I'm glad that your first karaoke was John Bon Jovi, because
He's not, but that's okay.
I've come to have an appreciation for him.
He's
Okay.
much maligned, but I think he's actually very good.
Yeah, he is. He is. Or maybe that just comes with age, appreciating him.
Perhaps.
All right. Something I don't think, I've known you for a lot of years, but I don't think I've ever asked. I know that you have a lot to do with Oklahoma. Are you from Oklahoma?
No, I lived there for a while. I'm from everywhere. My father was in the Air Force, so
Yeah.
I was actually born in Japan, but the epicanthic folds went away, so that's a good thing. Lived in Colorado, lived in Ohio and Florida, and then when my parents got divorced, I ended up in Oklahoma for a while with my mother. So I graduated from high school there, went to college there, and then came back to Colorado. So,
Because you never seem to have a pronounced Okie accent.
I can put it on when I need to, it's all right. But we won't do that. We'll
Very good.
spare people that.
Do Oklahomans sort of, I mean the Oklahoma science fiction community at least, do they sort of look at you like a lost son?
I'm kind of the bastard stepchild of Oklahoma, I think. They look at me and they go, well, you said a novel here, so we'll let you keep coming back, and you're writing with one of our Oklahoma guys, so I guess that's okay, but we're not really sure about you yet.
Well, were you still in Oklahoma when you started writing professionally?
The first story I sold was actually right after I took your CCA class. The first story I submitted that you read was Mending Wounds, and that sold to Marion Zimmer Bradley for Sword and Sorceress Volume 7. And that was one where I wrote that story the day of the, I guess the night before we had the class where I said I'd turn it in. And you made, I think, a couple of minor suggestions. I made those suggestions and sold it. Took those. It was great. So thank you.
Well, you're
So
welcome.
you're responsible for me getting my first sale.
Well, you heard it here. Well, at least I didn't say something like, what a piece of crap.
Actually, you did. You started with that, but that's okay.
Okay.
But, some of the stories that I had written while I was in Oklahoma did end up selling, so
Yeah.
I did begin there. But it was while I was here that I did all the selling.
Just almost tangentially, but is there anything particular about Oklahoma that you found leads to the fiction that you'd like to write?
Well, they have a church on every corner, so that's probably why I started off writing horror. And so, you kind of get a lot of the superstition and such there. A lot of people believe in ghosts and goblins and things that go bump in the night. And, if not for that, I guess, other than that, I'd say the Tulsa Driller probably led to some of it. They have this gigantic statue of this driller in front of an amusement park. The amusement park I think is gone, but Bell's Amusement Park.
I think maybe it's been transformed into the fairgrounds.
They may have. I haven't been by there in a while.
Because I've been there more recently than you, and I remember it was referred to as the Big Driller. And when I heard about it, I was trying to go see the Big Driller. I thought maybe they had like a monument to dentistry or something like that. But it is, Paul Bunyan has nothing on the Big Driller. So, in a sense, is Oklahoma sort of a setting for a peculiar form of American Gothic?
I suppose it could be. Like I said, set one way ticket to midnight there. I think that it was intrinsic to that story in my view. I don't think I could have set that like in Denver, for example.
Yeah.
But I always enjoyed the time that I lived there. I have a lot of good friends there. And so, I do like to go back. It's fun to go back. I don't know that I'd want to live there. It's kind of like Manhattan. It's great to visit, but I don't know if I'd actually want to live there.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
I'll probably say the same thing about Colorado if I move. So.
Do you have any immediate plans for doing that?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
But we'll see. Times change quickly, don't they?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you're here for the duration, right?
Well, I'm sort of stuck here now.
Yeah, you kind of
But-
set down your roots.
What, such as they are, but what I enjoy though from time to time living in Colorado is I keep finding out that there are people working in science fiction and fantasy in Colorado that I had no idea, or I've totally lost track of in any case. Most recently was finding out that George Saunders, who's an academic at Syracuse, but is also a well-regarded literary novelist, and writes a lot of short stories, and a lot of his fiction is science fictional, or fantasy-ish, or slipstream, or whatever you want to call it. But he just won the Folio Prize, which is the UK's latest attempt to have a prize that rivals the Man Booker Award.
Mm-hmm.
And George Saunders' last short story collection won the Folio Prize, and you get something like $60,000, which is better than, sadly, one gets for a Bram Stoker Award, or a Hugo, or a Nebula, or any of the other proprietary awards in the field. But I only found out when I read an interview with Saunders that he used to live in Colorado. And he, in fact, graduated from the Colorado School of Mines in 1980 with a petroleum engineering degree. Moved from there to Borneo and worked for a couple of years in the jungle, and then decided, gee, maybe I would rather live back in the States and become a college professor and a writer, and has done so very successfully. Similarly, it wasn't that long ago when I saw a familiar face on television, and I remembered back to the late 1970s, not long after the Northern Colorado Writers Workshop, which predominantly a science fiction workshop, started, and I realized that the guy on the screen was Dan Gilbert, who once was in the NCWW, desperately wanted to write science fiction short stories. He finally, after about a year, wrote and published a half dozen stories. Then he moved away and sort of like George Saunders, went into academics. Now, it turns out that Dan Gilbert is a successful academic who you can find some of his work on the internet at the TED Talks website. He's done some TED Talks. But also, you can see him on TV many nights of the week. He's the on-screen frontman for Prudential. Balding guy, glasses, affable disposition, who's trying to urge you to deal with Prudential to set up your retirement plans. So I continue to be amazed by what happens to people who once wrote science fiction.
Who lived in Colorado.
Who lived
sure.
in Colorado. Yeah.
Sure. I was
Okay.
amazed when I read the High Fantastic, the anthology that Steve Resnick-Tim did. There were a lot of writers I had no clue had connections with Colorado.
Yeah.
And there's quite a few.
There are very many.
Yes. Is there something in the water, or it's Rocky Flats? We don't.
You're right, something in the water.
Yeah.
And Rocky Flats, it all goes, and the Rocky Mountain Arsenal.
Well, that too, plus the UFO base under the DIA, right?
Well, you
That's
say
something
it,
to do with
you say it's the UFO base, and I was taught that the spaces under the runways at DIA were for political prisoners.
Oh, okay.
I like the alien base much more than
It could
the
be both.
political
You
They'll
don't
prisoners.
be
know.
held by the aliens.
What's that?
They'll be held there by the aliens.
Yeah.
That's right.
Captured.
You know?
Yeah.
They've got those little Strieber scopes. You got to watch out.
And of course, behind it all are the Masons, because
Mhm.
we've all seen the Masonic symbology at DIA Terminal.
Yes,
And
indeed.
the final thing I'll say about this is, in the pick up your luggage area, on both sides of the terminal, whether you head out toward the east or the west parking areas, most people never look above their line of sight, but either direction as you head out of the luggage area, look above your line of sight, because on each side there's a sculpture, a life-size sculpture up above the door of an open Samsonite two-seater with a gargoyle lunging out. It's great. It's hard to get your picture taken with it unless whoever
But
has
you've
the
tried.
camera is down on the floor and you've got a steep angle. But again, there's so much that's science fictional about even
Yes.
DIA.
Yes. It's impressive. It's very
Anyway.
impressive.
Anyway, when did you start writing book-length fiction?
Oh, that would have been back in when I first started writing, actually, was novels.
Yeah.
I wrote a couple of short stories when I was in college, when I first started college, because it was an easy A. And then they had a novel writing class. I said, I'll take that, because that's another easy A. Get those English things out of the way. And they assigned the book Writing the Novel from Plot to Print by Lawrence Block. So I read that and went, wait a minute, this is actually possible. So I wrote a novel during that class. And so we will thankfully say that it has been burned. Nobody has to suffer through that. It was a really, really bad fantasy novel called Death Sword. And even the title just makes me cringe. So no more blackmail material.
But there are literally
It's
no
great.
copies left?
Zero. And that's a very good thing.
Isn't that-
Trust me on this.
Isn't that
was a very
surprising?
good
Because
thing.
most writers keep one copy around just in case, for old time's sake, and then invariably that'll be found after your demise.
One would hope not.
And it's so easy to put stuff like that up on the net.
It is, and I've my parents recently passed away, so I had a lot of the stuff that they had saved, I just got. And so they kept all these things, and including things I'd written and drawn when I was a little kid. And I'm looking at this going, why did you save this? You know? Do I need to burn this too? But I haven't yet, so
Yeah.
they'll have that at least. But I have an excuse, then I was just a little kid. You know, you don't want to have that happen when you're like 20.
Well, there's a
Terrible.
compromise, because where'd you go to university in Oklahoma?
Northeastern State University in Tahlequah, Oklahoma.
Okay, that one I can't vouch for in this regard, but
Probably not.
no, what I was going to say was, so many of us, after the years go by, we all accumulate basically a lot of writing related crap.
Sure.
And one thing to do with it is to simply put it in archival boxes and donate it to our alma mater.
Sure.
Used to be, we could get paid a lot of money for this. No more. Sometimes you can get a tax break. Depends a lot on the arrangement that the university has. But it's something that you might consider, is donating your stuff. You get it out of the house, you get it out of the storage area, and some graduate student you will probably never meet during your lifetime, someday, in that incredible search for material that hasn't already been overly trodden, will say, you know, I read this book by Gary Jonas. I would like to do the definitive academic study of the progress of his work from nothing to immoderately successful and rich. And they'll want those archives.
And they're going to go, you know, he was so much better when he started, and now he just, this later stuff, wow, that just sucks.
That's the risk.
It's a huge risk. We don't
It's
want
a huge
that,
risk,
do we?
yeah.
Come on.
Well, that's, yeah, I mean, most people have heard this, that one of the great aggravations of Isaac Asimov's later life were the people who not infrequently came up to him and said, well, Dr. Asimov, I so much love Nightfall, which was the classic story published in the early 1940s. And people would then proceed to tell him, you know, it really is, I think, the best thing you've ever done. And Dr. Asimov, who has at that point between 300 and 400 books in print, an awful lot of short fiction, would do his best to sigh compassionately and sometimes utter a Yiddish curse, but most of the time just politely smile.
Yes, thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. That was before the Foundation trilogy. That was before iRobot. That was before all these other
Yeah.
classics that everybody's still reading. So, sure.
So what was the first book then that you have not destroyed and found a home for? And
that would be One Way Ticket to Midnight. So, which they have the original printing of over there from Yard Dog Press, and it's currently available as an ebook online as well. So, yes, you'll have to dig for it there. Yes, my little,
right.
the horror novel about the blues. So I had a really good time writing that, but it took way too long to write.
Yeah.
I think I spent about 10 years writing that. So if you work out what I made per hour, I think I had to pay. So, you know, we don't want to go there. That was a long time ago, huh?
God.
You saw early versions of that, too.
Yeah.
Back when it was called Midnight City Blues, before I decided to steal a line from Sammy Hagar.
What's scary is I had forgotten that I wrote this lengthy blurb at the beginning of it.
You did.
Well, that's what happens to aging writers. Because indeed, my blurb starts out, the Oklahoma Gothic is definitely an underappreciated and little recognized area of supernatural fiction. So, when I asked you about Oklahoma Gothic,
I thought you were referring to this.
and of course I was not. Well, okay. And God, and this comes from the immortal Yard Dog Press,
Yes.
who I believe are still in business.
Yes, they are still in
Yes, they
business.
are.
They're doing well. Got plenty of ebooks coming out all the time, and they still do paperbacks as well. So
And,
that's Selena Rosen and Lynn Stranathan. They're both
They are
really
the-
good people, and
Yeah, they're terrific
fun to
people.
work with.
And they are immensely productive in terms
Yes.
of what they publish. And they are the largest publisher in Alma, Arkansas.
You know, as you drive into Alma, Arkansas, they have a sign saying, "Welcome to Alma, Arkansas, home of Selena A. Rosen."
No
Whoa.
kidding?
No kidding.
That's marvelous.
Yes. You know. So I think that's just way cool. You can see a picture of it. I think they have that on probably on the Yard Dog Press website. If not, they certainly it's made the rounds on Facebook.
Yeah, it's something maybe somebody should take to City Council here in Denver
Mm-hmm.
so that we can have some I-20, I-25 and I-70 road signs. Welcome to... I mean, the closest thing we've got to welcome to various writers in Denver is in West Denver. We do have Wadsworth. We do have Harlan. Although some would argue that the street is not named after Harlan Ellison, but
Don't tell him that. He could probably argue with you and prove that it's true. It was just named after him.
yeah.
I'm sure
Okay.
it would probably cross between I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream and Jeff D is Fives in some way.
Mm.
That's a good thing.
Okay, so you started off certainly dealing with what are generally called small publishers.
Yes.
Now, have you had any flirtations with self-publishing?
Night Marshal was my first self-published story there. So I did that one myself.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. And of course I have my so-called secret pseudonym where I've published a bunch of stories under a pen name that have done better than stuff that I write under my own name, sadly.
So the secret pseudonym, is this secret in part because it's in the area of something like Sasquatch porn?
Yes, it is.
Well, I know that you're not the originator of Sasquatch
No,
porn.
no, I did
because,
not come up with
she
that.
lives in Parker, as it happens.
Yes, yes, yes. What was her name? Something Wade, Virginia Wade, I think, is the
Virginia
pen
Wade,
name on that?
because she named herself after the British tennis star.
Mhm.
God knows why. And Virginia Wade is still alive and living in the UK, and no one has any idea of whether or not the real Virginia Wade, the living Virginia Wade, the literal Virginia Wade, has any idea that her name has been appropriated for the Sasquatch porn industry.
She doesn't understand why people keep coming up to her wanting her to sign copies of Come for Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Right? Come on. You know it's got to happen.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it needs to. And this is something you should film, by the way. You should get that. I would like to see her reaction.
So, is there any, how can I put this, because we want to preserve your privacy, but in your area of pseudonymous expertise, are you practicing in any specific genre of R-rated or worse fiction?
Yes, yes. I will just go ahead and show you because I want to see your face on this because you happen to mention Bigfoot.
Yeah.
So we will just show you the very first one.
Excuse me. I mean, this is the only way to do it. Boffing Bigfoot.
Yes.
And never mind the pseudonym.
Yes, the pseudonym is NL Probe. Yes.
Yeah. Subtitle: The Alien Sex Chronicles, Volume 1.
Yes, I've done 10 of them. I brought 5 of them.
Holy
The second
moly.
was this is the very rare cover because I got in trouble on Amazon for this cover. 50 Slaves of Grace. So they didn't like the fact that you can almost see something there, so I had to put a shirt on. Had to do a different person there. And then that was followed up by Tall, White, and Hung. And those of you who know about the aliens, there's some guy who actually thinks there's an alien group called the Tall Whites who live in Nevada. So I figure they've got to be.
I would think they'd be living in Idaho.
Yeah, you'd think. Mounting the Mothman was the next one. Yes, these are really, really bad. The cheesy covers I did myself. I'm Ravaged by the Reptilian, for those of you who know David Icke. So yes, these are really just awful. And you're welcome to take a look at those, I suppose.
Yeah.
And the pseudonym came about because Joe Conrath, who runs the Newbie's Guide for Self-Publishing and is a terrific writer in his own right, writing the Jack Daniels mystery novels. He had a challenge on his little website, telling people, come up with something, spend no more than 8 hours, and then publish it, and he would promote it. So I did How to Get Abducted by UFO Aliens. And so I saw this art. I said, that is just bad enough that it has to go on there. So I did that one. And that's the little guidebook. So, too much fun. And yes, I make more money from these than I do from my own writing. These have been out since, I think the first one, Bigfoot, came out in October. I did no promotion. These just took off. and not great. I mean, they're not selling like gangbusters, but they are certainly making me more money than the Jonathan Shade books and When We Take It to Midnight and Night Marshal, and not more than Pirates, though. Pirates has still got the lead on that.
Well, while we're talking about self-publishing then, since, you know, what are the whole premises of this series is to talk about the newer ways of earning some sort of living in terms of freelance writing, commercial writing, finding an audience. And since I was just using Sasquatch porn as an example, I didn't realize that.
I thought you'd seen they had the Business Insider had a big write-up on Virginia Wade and all of that, and they had a picture of Boffing Bigfoot on there with a link to it. So
Wow.
I thought you'd seen that, and you
No.
must have figured it out. I was like,
No, I had just seen the.
you have done your investigatory work. You really are James Lipton.
Actually, I'd done some investigative work. What I saw was the Valentine's Day issue of Westward, where the cover story was half devoted to Virginia Wade.
Okay.
Um,
I had
Right.
never heard of her until they did that Business Insider thing.
yeah.
I just thought, Boffing Bigfoot, that amused me, so I did that.
Okay. I saw the label you're using for that press is Horny Alien.
Horny Alien Press, yes.
Yeah.
So
Uh,
bad.
British
So bad.
edition is the Randy Alien Press. Right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Anyway, since we're talking about self-publishing, and since one of the premises of the series is to talk about how people are doing this kind of enterprise, what's some of the boilerplate of how you did self-published pseudonymous porn? I'm not asking about the research.
Oh, well, actually,
I mean, if you want 'em- if you
the
want 'em.
amazing, the field research was just delightful, but no. Seriously, the real research was mostly into what do people really know about, something like the Mothman, and then getting stuff on Point Pleasant and getting the geography correct, or like on the reptilian thing, making sure that the Isle of Wight, the information I use on that is correct. Little things like that, but I had maybe 10 minutes of research on any of these. The longest I spent on any of these was maybe 3 hours, including creating the cover, as you could probably tell from the cheesy covers, but they're intentionally cheesy. So, and the astonishing thing is that these things have been read and reviewed on blogs, and they've got pretty good reviews too, which is amazing. So, go figure. But it was just something I said, all right, I'm just going to do it. I knocked one out, and then used Juto, which is a formatting program. Costs like $40 online. And you can run your project through there. It'll create the Mobi, which is what you use for the Kindle, and it'll create the EPUB, which is what you use for Barnes & Noble and Kobo, and you can do the Smashwords version there as well, and you can upload all those yourself and let them go on sale. And then you sink or swim. But you have forever for people to find these things. And, as I look at these, I'm still making money on them.
Yeah. Well, Virginia Wade, whatever her real name, did get in trouble with Amazon, she said, for, I think it was a couple of her titles.
Mhm.
And you're mentioning that it was the visual on one of your
On the
books.
one that I did, it was the visual. The strange thing is when I did the paperback through CreateSpace, and astonishingly, the paperbacks sell too. Okay. I actually sell these, which is amazing to me. They're little chapbooks that people buy them. And then I collected them into, full-length books. There's the Complete Alien Sex Chronicles, and people buy that as well. But the CreateSpace version of the paperback went through no problem. It was the Kindle version that they objected to the cover on. And they don't tell you what they're objecting to. They just say that you have violated their, little bylaws on what you're supposed to do and what you're allowed to put up there. And you send them an email, can you be specific? No, you've violated this. And so it's like, all right, fine. So I just grabbed a picture of a different girl, threw her onto the cover, and uploaded that, and that went through.
And they didn't object.
They didn't object to that
Okay.
one. So I had to make sure it wasn't the content inside, because the Grays one was a lot racier than the Bigfoot one. So go figure. The Grays have their fixations after all.
I'll take your word for it.
Yes. And Scott over here's trying not to die. I love that. Go ahead. But the experience on self-publishing with Night Marshal was actually a little different, because on that one, this is the one I actually worked on. You know, I did the thing
Yeah.
of, I made sure I got, really good cover art, and so you pay for the cover. I paid for the editing, because you don't want to put out something that's not edited. So I paid a professional editor to do the editing, and then I did all the formatting myself and put it up. There are things that I've learned since then where I could actually make this look better, but it's not worth the time and the hassle to go back to fix it, so, but it still looks pretty good.
Did this start out as a deliberate foray into self-publishing, or had this
Initially,
gone to a number of publishers?
with Night Marshal, originally it was going to be a screenplay. I had come up with the idea of doing a screenplay because I was writing screenplays at the time. I had a couple of them optioned in Hollywood, and I thought, well, what would be something cheap that you could do here, but would still be kind of fun? And I thought, well, if we do something in wintertime, we could do something about a vampire in the Old West, stuck, kind of snowbound into a town, and we could do most of the stuff interior and get enough exterior shots to make it look good, and it would be cheap to do. So I started writing the screenplay, and a friend of mine said he'd do a graphic novel version because he's an artist, but he never actually got any of the artwork going. So I said, well, maybe I'll just turn that into a novella, and I decided that would be the first thing I tried to do on my own. I never submitted that one anywhere else. It was a deliberate thing just to try out the self-publishing route to see what it was like. And I enjoyed it. It's nice. You have a lot of control, and that's something that you don't have when you go through another publisher. So.
Okay, I'll be the devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
As a legitimate book,
It's a novella.
I mean,
Yeah.
but it looks like a book, and it
Mhm.
reads like a book, and hefts like a book. How did you promote this?
I did a couple of tweets, and I did a couple of Facebook posts, a few interviews. Nothing major on it. I just figured it would find its audience or it wouldn't. And, I spent, I'm trying to think, how much did I spend? Probably about $700 total putting it together, and I am in profit mode on it already.
Yeah.
It came out in, I think, November of 2012, and so it's made back its money, and now everything that comes in is pure profit. And I opened this up, the idea was to open it up to other writers, to let them write stories as well. Most of the writers that I invited never got their stories done. But Glenn Sixbury did one, and then Rebecca Hodgkins, who's here, she did one. And Jim Burke has written one, that one's out now. So it's something where if people want to write one, I'm totally fine with that. This is something where if you want to write about Jack Talon, you can. So I figure the more books that are out there, the better. Initially, I saw it as like a season of a TV show is what I wanted to do. And each one, there'd be an overall arc, and each story would be sold separately that would be complete, and you could read them in any order, but would also fill in a piece of the puzzle as we go forward, so that there'd be some big bad eventually that would have to be eradicated. But that was way more work than I was willing to put into it, since it wasn't really making any money. So. But it was a good experience, and I enjoyed it. So I'd like to do it again on a novel-length project at some point.
Well, coming out like this, have you been able to find venues who reviewed it? And of course, the great horror for many people who are self-publishing, or publishing commercially for that matter, the Amazon reviews, the Goodreads. Have you been getting back reaction from there?
I've had reaction from those. It gets reviewed on Amazon. You get your good reviews, you get your bad reviews, depending on whether or not you have reached your target audience.
Yeah.
The amusing thing to me is on something like this, since it's promoted in the Western category, I did the giveaway at one point where you give plenty of copies away for free, doing I was Kindle Select at the time, so I made it free for 5 days, and ended up getting a couple of bad reviews on that. One of them was because it had The Living Dead in it. And what's the first thing it says? Vampires in the Old West. And what does it say here? A Tale of the Undead West. So somebody who looks at it, you'd think that they would know, okay, you're getting a weird Western. It's promoted as a weird Western. If you read about it, it's a weird Western. But if somebody downloads it, they look at the cover, this doesn't necessarily, unless you're looking at the blood spots and such, it doesn't necessarily shout weird Western. So they're thinking they're getting a regular Western. They read that, that's not at all what they were looking for. So you'll get a bad review from something like that. But most of the reviews have been positive, and it gets into bookstores. That's the other myth that goes around a lot is that if you self-publish something, it's not going to end up in any bookstores. Mostly, it'll end up on their online bookstores, but they sell there. I sell copies of Night Marshal every month in the paperback edition, as well as the ebooks. So, you know, to me, it's completely worth doing. It's a valid way to go about it. I wouldn't want to do something like that where it wasn't professionally edited. That's the big, difference there, because people can do anything. You're free to write it and put it up, and I think that's actually great. But if you're going to do service for a reader, you want to make sure that they're getting something good. So you make sure it's been properly edited, and you have a professional cover, and you go about all the things that you should do. And then you move on to the next project. And to me, the best promotion is to write the next book.
Yeah.
So I think that's true in traditional publishing as well. It's always, they expect you to do some promotion, sure, but it's the next book. Once you have a certain number of books out there, as long as they're in print, which is one of the problems that a lot of writers have had, they write a series and book 1 and 2 are out of print by the time the third one comes out. So it's hard to build a career that way. But with the way the ebooks work and the way the self-publishing print-on-demand works, those are still available, and people can get them. So.
Oh. Something that's so last century. The traditional publishing model
Yes.
says that you sell a book to a publisher and they edit it, they design it. In fact, they are known for overdoing it. That's why people got covers that they didn't particularly like or approve of. But that was part of the publisher's purview.
Sure.
So when you're doing this yourself, where do you find affordable professionals, such as editors or graphic designers or artists, if you don't do it yourself?
You would be amazed that the number of editors who have worked in New York publishing do freelance editing. And so you contact them, you find out what their rates are. And like on this one, it was Laura Ann Gilman who did the editing. And she was with Rock Books for many years. And now she's a writer on her own as well, a tremendous writer, but she also does editing on the side. So I just got in touch with her, asked her if she would edit it. She quoted me a price. I said, okay, let's do it. So I paid her. She did the edits.
What was the price?
It depends on the length. On this one, I think I paid her like $500 to do the edits. So, and you can get a better price than that, or you can get a worse price depending on who you go to. And that's the thing. You can also negotiate. There are different ways to play it. And it wouldn't surprise me if at some point there's editors who will do it like for a percentage. But you don't want to do that, ideally. If you can't afford to pay the editing up front, then you might consider something like that where the editor gets a percentage. A lot of the smaller publishers, I think, are doing that, where editors will work for them for a percentage of the profit on the book. And so that's how they're able to get professional editors to work with them. So you have a lot of different venues that you can go with now, and it's, everybody can do it differently, and it's just way cool. But did the more traditional thing with Pirates of the Outrigger Rift, where that one, they paid for a developmental editor, and so the editor we had he'd worked with Harper and Bantam. He'd edited people like Kevin J. Anderson and David Brin, and then he ends up editing us. And it's like, okay, well, that's really kind of cool. And we get this really nice cover from Chris McGrath. Who's been nominated for a Hugo. He did the Dresden Files covers. He's a phenomenal artist, and so we get a really nice cover. I really like that too. There's no way I could have afforded to pay Chris McGrath to do a cover for me for something like Night Marshal. Although I did look into possibly having Neil Adams do a cover. I got him to quote me a price. Neil Adams, the comic book artist, and I got him to quote me a price, and I certainly thought about that. It's very, very interesting. So you never know unless you ask.
So you didn't have to go. In other words, you did not have to go to Craigslist.
No, I didn't have to go to Craigslist.
Good.
There are people who get covers on Fiverr, where they'll pay $5 or $10. There are these artists who will do a professional-looking cover for $5. Yet they use, they'll probably reuse a lot of art. If you want custom art, you pay them an extra $5, and so you've spent $10 and you get a cover. And they may do some changes for you, they may not. If you want the Photoshop file, you can pay them an extra $5 and they'll send that to you. I know people who've done that. And for Night Marshal, I went to a woman named Robin Ludwig. I found her online, and I liked her work. And for her, I think it was like $120 plus the cost of the stock photos. So.
Well, what percentage then of something like Night Marshal is print on demand.
That's
as opposed to
100%.
digital.
Oh, as far as the sales
Yeah.
ratio, the vast majority is ebook.
Yeah.
You know, certainly. People are going to download it to a Kindle or take it on their iPhone or their iPad or whatever, their Nook, and they'll read it there. And so I'm trying to think if I could guesstimate a percentage, and I'd say probably 85% would be
Yeah.
ebook, and then maybe 15% going for paperback.
Would you do limited runs of like 10 or 50 copies, whatever, and then you're your own fulfillment house for the
I
paper
did that
copies?
for a while, where I would get 10 in, and I'd sell those, and then I'd get another 10 in, and I'd sell those. And I normally did that before I'd go to a convention, and that way I'd have something there to put on somebody's table. I'd let them take the 40%. You give them the 40% discount, so the bookseller gets a profit on carrying the book as well. A lot of them will do that because it's sort of a consignment thing. They pay you at the end of the weekend. Here you go. We sold 5 copies. Here's $30 or whatever. So it's an interesting way to do it. But you don't have to. That's the nice thing.
Yeah.
You just let people know it's available. They can go order it, or they can go to their bookstore and let the bookstore order it. Because Night Marshal's available through Ingram, so any bookstore can get it, and it's carried. And online, certainly copies have sold on Barnes and Noble. Copies have sold through Powell's. Copies have sold, various places. So that's, again, you can kind of shatter that myth that you can't get distribution, because you really can. It's different now than it was. So
Yeah.
I like that. And now with CreateSpace, the expanded distribution is free. They used to charge you $25 to get the expanded distribution. Now, Amazon knows, I guess, since Amazon owns CreateSpace, they know that they can make good money on that just by fulfilling orders. So they made that for free, and I'm sure that they've made a fortune from that. They don't do anything unless they know they're going to make money from it. They're very good at it.
Okay, that's a good transition to, I'd like to hear the history of this project.
Pirates of the Outrigger Rift.
Yes.
Yes. Bill and I, gosh, this was probably 20 years ago, maybe more, we decided we wanted to write some science fiction stuff, but we wanted to do the old style sci-fi. We didn't want to do the thing of where you have to explain every little thing about how the warp drive works, and we wanted to say, no, they want to go to a planet, let's let them go to a planet, let's play it like it really, the Old West kind of thing, except in outer space. So there was a company called Dime Novels, and they were looking to put out these short novels, probably 40, 50,000 words long, and that they would have them at the check stands in grocery stores and bookstores as kind of an impulse buy. And people like Steve Perry sold to them and had their books published that way. Not Steve Perry from Journey, but Steve Perry, the writer, the author of the Man Who Never Missed, a terrific book. But we wrote this and sent that to them, and they accepted it. And then they promptly went out of business. So we were stuck with a 50,000 word story. We had no idea what to do with. And we talked about expanding it, and we worked several times where we'd get together. When I'd go down to Oklahoma for a convention, I'd stay a couple extra days, and we'd work on it, trying to figure out how can we expand this to a novel. And it never seemed to flow for a novel. We'd take different approaches, and it just never seemed to work. Then I saw that Amazon was doing the Kindle serials, and this was a new thing where they would release books in serial form, kind of like Charles Dickens used to publish, and like Stephen King did with The Green Mile, which is a more recent example that did well for traditional publishers. And we said, all right, I'm going to try that. So I submitted it through their deal. I said, you click here, you can submit, told you what you have to do. I followed the directions, sent it in, and a month later, I got an email from a guy named David Pomerico, who at the time was the acquisitions editor at 47 North. And he said he'd like to set up a time to talk to me on the phone. So I talked to him on the phone the next day, and he wanted to buy the book. But he wanted us to expand it to a full-length novel. So, we had it at 50,000. He wanted it to be 70. So, we're not idiots. We said yes. And so we figured out how to do it then. And we had all this material that we'd put together, taking these different stabs at taking it there. And we went, if we use this piece, and we use this piece, we use this piece, we could assemble this thing and then kind of do a smooth over. The story's there. It's all there. All we have to do is put it together. We just never really saw it until somebody said, we'll give you a professional level advance if you'll put this thing together for us. So there you go. And then we went through the editing process, which was really good. No problems there. They asked for a few minor changes, and we'd make the changes. And then they had the best copy editor I've ever worked with. woman named Jody Young, who also freelances at rooftopcopy.com, and she did the best copy edit I've ever seen. And so I was really impressed. They've been fantastic to work with. They did the serial, came out on time. Of course, we had a crispy cut cover. How could you argue with that, And then the serial did well, and then they brought it out as the full-length ebook, and then they did their Kindle Daily Deal back in December, and the book was coming out in paperback in January. So when they did the Daily Deal, that shot the book up, because the promotion that they did, we reached the top 100 paid on Amazon in the Kindle, which that's a very nice place to be. It means you're selling a lot of copies. So then the paperback came out. Paperback has been selling. It doesn't sell like gangbusters. There are a lot of bookstores who certainly won't carry it because it's from Amazon, and that's understandable. But in my view, 47 North is just another publisher, and you can still make money on selling that book, which is one of the things that's great about Ron and Nina. They're willing to carry the book. They think, well, Amazon's hurt us, but actually Amazon hurts more Barnes & Noble than it would hurt someplace like this, where here you have a specialty audience, and that's why I think independent bookstores are making a resurgence right now. They're coming back, and I love that, because I like to go into a bookstore where people know the books, and that's what you can get with somebody like Ron and Nina here at Who Else Books, at the book mall. And you can get that at Tattered Cover, you can get that at Powell's, you can get that at all these great places around the country. And even Hugh Howey right now is talking about opening up an independent bookstore. Hugh Howey, the author of Wool. So he's looking at opening one in Jupiter, Florida. He may do that, who knows. But he has some great ideas for it. He used to work in a bookstore. And now it's actually possible to come back, because people want to get a book right then and there. And they like to have something recommended to them. And that's what you get with an independent bookstore, is people who love books work there, and they can hand sell the books. And that's one of the things I like about working with independent bookstores too. I'm sure you feel much the same way about that.
Yes.
So, there you go.
Yeah. Just topically, what's your opinion right now about the very real possibility that next year at this time there will be no Barnes & Noble?
I think Barnes & Noble will survive.
How?
I think that, there are a few things that they could do that would make them viable again. One thing would be to close down the stores that aren't performing as well, open bigger stores, make them a destination. I think that if you make it a destination, people will go. And, they still have the Nook. I think the Nook does better than a lot of people think. I sell a lot of books on the Nook. So I'm looking at that going, they have to be making money here. So it's something where it should be profitable. So people who say that Barnes & Noble is going to go away, I'm not buying it. I think that they have a stronger position than maybe they look like when these people are, what the pundits are saying.
Well, that's a good optimistic view.
Sure.
But
if they do go under, independent bookstores
Yeah.
will have an even stronger comeback, because people want bookstores. People our age for sure want bookstores, so I think they're going to be certainly viable for at least another 20, 30 years.
But then the customer base will die.
As the customer base dies off, so will the bookstore owners, and everybody will be buying
So
e-books.
everything will work out fine.
And we'll be fine. It's all
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Yes, I like to be optimistic. It's a good way to be.
Because to me, it was a little bit of a loopy direction for Barnes & Noble. It was in the business pages lately, where the head of Barnes & Noble said that the future for the chain is in college bookstores. That, I guess, having a strange form of destination for a certain type of customer. But it didn't sound convincing.
No, probably not. I can see where they're thinking, well, they have to buy these books, and if we stock those books in this bookstore, they are required to buy them. It's on the syllabus. They'll get it.
Yeah.
So I can see where, that's certainly a way for some people to make some money, but I think that the college bookstores already have the market cornered, don't they?
One would think.
I would think, hey, that's okay. Whatever works.
So, it's clear from what you said tonight that you're taking a lot of different routes, which sort of converge, and you may not be getting rich, but maybe you are, for all I know, in terms of Sasquatch porn.
Not yet.
But it's clear that you know, you have found ways, put them all together, you found ways to find an audience, you
Mhm.
found a way to get a respectable amount of income.
Mhm.
Do you still entertain any notion of reverting back to the old publishing model? I mean, do you want to sell
want
to
to
one of the
sell-
big six
No,
publishers?
actually, I'm not as interested in that as I used to be. Back, when they were the only option, that was one thing. But now, I don't see that they're necessary. You don't need a publisher to reach a reader. And, I mean, 47 North has the first look on the next book that I do, which is fine. I'm happy to sell to them. I think they do a great job. They do stuff like, right this month they're doing a promotion where Pirates is free to people who have a Samsung device. They can download the free Kindle app and get a free copy of Pirates on ebook. I think that's awesome. And they paid us to do that. They paid us to give away the book. It's like, before do we sign? Before they change their minds, We'd have done this for free. It's great because you build audience. But they understand that too. And that's, I think, something that a lot of the traditional publishers are starting to catch on to as well, which is why you'll see somebody like Lee Child write a Jack Reacher novella that they put out nice and cheap so people can pick that up and sample Jack Reacher. And then they go, wow, this is really good. I got to go buy Killing Floor. And they start working their way through the series. So.
Well, you're a pretty astute observer. Do you discern any kind, in spite of what they've done for you, do you discern any kind of evil underbelly to Amazon?
We call this, I think, Passive Guy. There's a place called the Passive Voice online, and fantastic website. He calls this Amazon derangement syndrome, where if Amazon gives a discount, then Amazon is evil and they're trying to destroy all these bookstores. And if Amazon charges more money for a book, well, they're trying to rip off the customers. They can't win when it comes to something like this on that. It's just business. And I think that Jeff Bezos is actually a very business savvy guy. And what's one of the things that he says? Complaining is not a business strategy. I think he's right. I think, like right now they have the publisher. What's the publisher that's going through the battle with Amazon right now? Where they just Hachette. Where they just removed the pre-order buttons because that's something Amazon can do, right? So they removed the pre-order buttons from a lot of books. This hurts the authors who are with Hachette. Somebody who's publishing with Orbit, which is owned by Hachette, that's a problem for them. But for Amazon, that's nothing. And really, if you look at it, why did that come about? You have to look back about 6 months, because if you were paying any attention, you'd see that Hachette was doing some stuff with Amazon. They were probably already negotiating, and things weren't shipping in time. They had, it would take 3 weeks to get this particular book from Hachette, which means that they weren't sending it to Amazon to ship out. Because Amazon's all about the customer. So if they've got the book in stock, they're going to get the book to the customer as fast as they can, because that's a positive experience for the customer, which keeps them coming back. And with Hachette, I think really one of the reasons they probably pulled those buy buttons, and this is just speculation on my part, so I could easily be wrong on this, but I think it's because they weren't guaranteed that they were going to get those books. And if they have all these people who are ordering these books and they can't say for sure that they're going to ship them out, why take the orders until you know you're going to have them in stock to ship? So that's kind of my take on it. And again, I could be wrong, but I don't really see anything evil. I see it's just business. And that's what Hachette's doing too. They don't want to give a larger discount to Amazon than they're giving to, say, Tattered Cover, because that hurts their bottom line. So you can see where the negotiation process, each is doing things that maybe the other doesn't want them to do, and but again, it's all just business. I don't think that there's anything, evil. Although this is kind of a Horror Writers Association thing, so maybe we should create some evil for it. What do you think?
Well, I would only observe very neutrally that probably everybody in this room has seen or read uncountable suspense, crime, mystery fictions where the line, it's only business.
Works out very well, doesn't it? But for Hitman, it is only business. Hello? I've written about Hitman. I know about this.
That's right. You are the creator of the Hitman series.
One, yeah.
Well,
One Hitman, yes.
Series of one, yeah.
Well, a series of, I guess there are 5 stories about the
Yeah.
Hitman. But, yeah. So sure, yeah, I don't really look for evil when it comes to, I mean, business, and it's in a sense, you could argue that business is evil, I suppose. You evil capitalist, but who knows?
It's a good time to take a tonal break at least. And would you like to do a short reading?
Sure, I could do a reading.
Sure. Why don't you please?
I'll have to get my cheaters. So.